Hey guys, my name is Bonisile, and welcome to the FootyNotes podcast. I've decided to do a live recording this time around just to give this a go. So I have quite a few things that I'll be talking about. Mostly Arsenal, as I usually do, but I definitely have a gift today in terms of like just waking up to see the news that the technical director at Arsenal spoke to the media in England, explaining some of the decisions and the reasoning behind their decisions at the club. And to be quite honest, um, like it or not, whether you like what he had to say or you didn't like what he had to say, I think fair play to the guy for fronting up and like supporting Mikel Arteta, because I think Arteta has been the sole figure, kind of like facing the music for what's going on at Arsenal, which is, I guess, understandable when you're the manager. But this job is bigger than one man, and I think it's good to see Edu, um, you know, getting in front of cameras today and speaking to the fans, speaking to media, and giving an explanation like the club promised about a year ago that they would try to improve their communication with fans. Um, Arsenal have owners that are notorious for their silence in the U.S. And I guess ownership in the U.S. can be very quiet, and that's normal, and not something that people balk at. But in Europe and in South Africa and in the football world outside of the U.S., um, the expectation is that there's a connectedness. And I'm not going to go and give a lesson on like ownership structures, but I do just want to just say that as I go deeper into this conversation that like um, football teams are real community institutions, even though they're owned by rich people who don't really not always understand the community they operate within. But at least they tend to be at least covered by the people who work for them, who understand the community, and therefore are kind of, you know, doing things that are culturally relevant and culturally in tune with, the cultural beat or the drum of whatever community that football club is operating within. So it was nice that to see Arsenal do that. Um, so what I'm talking about here is that Edu, who is the technical director at Arsenal, sat down with Geoff Shreeves of Sky Sports, and sat down with the media team at Arsenal to talk about their plan. And um, and I think like I said, it was nice of them to do this because clubs don't have to do this, but it's actually better, especially if you're looking for people to support you and get behind you. You want to bring them along with you on the journey, share the vision, and I actually think it's good that they didn't share this before, while they were still working. I think they needed to get to do the work that that needed to be done, and now that the window is done, um, it'll make time to talk to people, and it sounds like they did quite a lot of work. So I have a few quotes that I would like to make reference to, and then I'm going to react to the quotes, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Arsenal's transfers, incoming and outgoing, and then I'm gonna kind of like pause there for today. So in his interview with Geoff Shreeves, um, so first of all, Shreeves, um, I'm kind of disappointed with some of the questions he was asking. It's as though I don't know if he was asking deliberately, like to see what Ed would say to things that fans and other people have been saying. But I wish he had done a bit more homework. I must confess, like I was a bit annoyed by one of the questions. But let's start with the first one. So Geoff Shreeves is like, what can you tell me about Arsenal's transfer window and the thinking behind it? The club spent the most money of any Premier League club, but the fans are underwhelmed. So and this is one of the kind of things that I see in English media that piss me off. For example, like the yes, Arsenal spent 156.8 million pounds, and Manchester United have spent 133.4. And Chelsea spent 97.5 on one player, and Man City spent 100 on one player. Just because Arsenal spent, 15, 20, 30 more million pounds than the next best spending team in England. It's so misleading, though, because a lot of what Arsenal spent money on is transfer fees. They're not going to be spending as much in wages as some of those clubs, which would probably, for example, in the case of Manchester United, they're probably going to be, not probably, they will be spending more just from the commitments they're making this summer, um, in salaries. The Athletic did a great job of explaining this in the Ben White versus Varane situation, because Sky Sports and people like Paul Merson, who are actually Arsenal legends, have been talking shit about this, like saying, you're paying £50 million for Ben White, but Man United can get Varane for about 34, 35 million pounds. And then what you see there is like this total denial of what Varane is going to command in wages. And so the Athletic kind of did a really good job. If you're a subscriber, go check it out. David Ornstein with James McNicholas and a few other people kind of contributed to this article. And they were saying that like in the next 4 years of their contract, Ben White will cost Arsenal about £67 million, roughly thereabouts. And Rafael Varane will cost Manchester United about £100 million, because he is going to earn more than 3 times a week what Ben White will be making at Arsenal. And I think the figure was like Ben White is reportedly earning about £80,000 a week, whilst Varane will be earning about £300,000 a week. And so this is the kind of stuff like that makes me just feel like, do your homework, or are you just asking these questions just to be, are you asking these questions just to be, controversial, or just to rile people up, like AFTV style, or that kind of stuff? I was actually not trying to talk about AFTV. I try not to mention the people's programs, but like Talk Sport, and I listen to shows like that in England that have a lot of this inflammatory, kind of divisive talk behind it, and it's very, very interesting to see for me, like when you see people who are leading thinkers on this field doing things like that. But anyway, there we go. So Arsenal, yes, they've spent money, like they've spent the most money, but have they really? So that's why it's very difficult for me to really take some of these guys seriously. But Edu's response to this question is, yes, I understand, because firstly, they have not seen the team play together, which is another thing. I mean, Arsenal's had issues. If you've been watching them, they've had issues. They haven't fielded the team that they've been meaning to put together on the field. He says that's one of the reasons, but I think we have to see the team we have to look at the wider context and see around the money. And then he goes on, open quote, we have signed 6 players who are under 23, which means a lot in terms of our planning. Normally, people like to see just one window. So I have to say, it is the bigger picture, because we started planning this for this squad a year ago in terms of consolidating the team and to try to get better foundation. If you remember, in that period, we renewed Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli a year ago with the intention to get that kind of base in the team. In a 1 year period, we have signed 10 players. 7 out of those 10 are under 23. We renewed 7 players in this period as well. In just the first team, 5 of those 7 players we renewed are under 23. So basically what Edu is trying to tell us here is like, they are really like deconstructing, the base of the team. But at the same time, as they're doing that, they are constructing what a lot of Arsenal fans have been asking for, which is a higher floor of the team. So Arsenal, on the best day, they perform 9 out of 10. But on an average to like worst day, which happens more than their best day. They're performing at a 4.5 to 6 out of 10. And so what this means to me is that they are buying players and promoting players from the academy that will raise that lower level of the team. So for me, an example of this would be, Sambilo Konga stepping in for either Bajaka or Pate, or playing with one of them, would be a better person coming off the bench for that position, today and in the future, than having El Neni be your sole backup in that position. And I can see the thinking behind that kind of thinking, like, Nuno Tavares backup for Tierney. I mean, these things don't really need explanation. The Arsenal team last year suffered a lot. So let me read back some of his comments again. We have to balance the squad better. We have to recruit players with the right characteristics and the right profile to make the squad better, more solid, and much more consistent. Because last season, we suffered with consistency. Now, I want to give Mikel and the board a much better squad. And so, yes, the interview continues. Geoff Shreeves asks, it's clear that there's a shift in Arsenal's policy in terms of buying young players that have value in the future. Is that because previously the transfer dealings have been poor? You've been left with players on high wages with no sell-on value, and like in the other case, like in the case of Willian, his contract was terminated. Has that been a factor in your thinking with this new policy? And so Edu replies, yes, if you see, we had 21 players exit over the year. All of those were terminated. We tried to sell, or we tried to loan with an obligation to buy as well. We tried to clear a bit off the squad and bring in some new faces. We had 21 outgoings and signed 10 players in 1 year. I mean, like, this is major surgery. Like, I don't know why people then are surprised to see the team go, a little bit wobbly when we lose a couple of senior players. Like, 21 outgoings, 10 signings. So this is definitely a major rebuild. And yes, it sucks. I mean, I never want to see my team lose. I never want to see Arsenal suffer. But at the end of the day, other teams are better than us at the moment, especially when we lose 2 to 3 valuable players. We're not in a place at the moment where we're able to survive those kinds of absentees. We're not, teams better than us suffered major absentees last year, and they struggled. Liverpool, people like to talk about how Liverpool finished in the Champions League positions and forget that they needed a goal with 2 games to go, a goal from Alisson in injury time to secure a Champions League spot. Like, they were that close from not making it, from having been champions the year before. And Liverpool spent most of last year outside of the top 4 because they didn't have 2 to 3 players that were injured. One of them being Virgil van Dijk, and they didn't have Joe Gomez. Nobody talks about him when they talk about how important the important players to Liverpool. Maybe Liverpool fans do, but people who don't watch Liverpool don't talk about Joe Gomez. But yeah, Joe Gomez and Van Dijk absent last year led to Liverpool almost missing out of the Champions League and one of the worst champion defenses of a Premier League trophy. So, a little bit of context here is really, really, useful to be provided. So this is why I commended the technical director coming out today and fronting up and speaking to people and giving, because like, even as an Arsenal fan, I know there's a lot of players that have been let go, but it's very hard to remember like the numbers. So when you see that data, we have let go 21 players and signed 10. And of those 21, we have to remember a lot of them have had to be paid off. And so, yes, it's been a very difficult time for the club, and it's going to continue to be difficult. And this is where I think the supporter part comes into play. And so he goes on and on and on. I'm going to try and see a few more things here, and then I'm going to move on to like the part that I want to talk about, like in terms of like how I see the window and respond to some of the things beyond this interview. But the next question from Geoff Shreeves that I want to just share with you guys is like, he says to Edu, the problem with that, Arsenal fans, let's say from the 6 new signings you've made, probably only 2 of them would go straight into the first team. So how much has this window really improved Arsenal team right now? And so Geoff Shreeves is really trying to, drive. And that's a really good question, because a lot of people are feeling like, yes, Arsenal spent 150 million pounds a week. I'm sorry, on the window, but haven't really improved. So, they haven't improved, and that's that's really hard to tell right now. But I can understand why people would feel that way. But if you ask me, is Ben White better than the center backs we had last year? I would say yes. So that's an improvement. Um, losing David Luiz and having Ben White, to me, that's an improvement. I know David Luiz is historically a better player than Ben White, but that's an improvement for this current Arsenal team and in Premier League football. We have signed, can't speak very much about Tommy yet, but it's hard for me to imagine that he'd be worse than Cedric and he'd be worse than Callum Chambers. But okay, I'm going to leave that one alone for now. But Martin Odegaard, just because he was at Arsenal last year for 6 months or less than that, actually, January till June, people take for granted that Arsenal played their best football with Martin Odegaard at Arsenal in all of last season. Martin Odegaard was part of that Arsenal team that, from basically the winter months all the way to the end, that had the third best record in the Premier League. Now, I'm not saying Arsenal are going to be the third best team in the season this year just because he's in the team. But what I am saying is Martin Odegaard will definitely be an improvement in that attacking midfield area compared to what we've had there. And he gives a lot more to the dressing room culturally. He's a student of the game. He's a committed player. He is the right guy at the right club for what the club needs to do and for what he is trying to do for his individual career. So if you ask me, I think Martin Odegaard is definitely the guy. He is definitely the guy that Arsenal should have gone for. I know Jose Mawa and some of the other sexy player names that people wanted, like James Maddison, who would have cost probably twice as much as what Odegaard is costing. So, Edu's response to this question, I just gave you my response, but like let me read Edu's response real quick. It says, you see the strategy for every single name. I can explain to you the reasons. Aaron Ramsdale, for example, he's a very good football player, has the potential to be part of the team in the future. Geoff Shreeves says, for the future. And Edu responds, yes, for the future of the team. What he wants to do is to balance the position. And why do you bring him in? We already have one player there, Bernd Leno, but we have to bring in someone to help for the future. Then the right back, Edu has a little bit of difficulty with English. His Portuguese is his first language. But I hope this is making sense. I'm understanding what he means there. He says, then at right back, we signed Takehiro Tomiyasu. He's someone who can come in and play straight away because we loaned Hector Bellerin to allow for the space for him to come in and feature straight away. That's the plan, of course, but it's up to Mikel if he plays or not. And then, if you go to Nuno Tavares, he has the same characteristics because we have Kieran Tierney to play, but we needed someone to cover him. And then Geoff Shreeves goes back and says, so they are like, if you were like, at the moment, they are reserves. You can only really say Martin Odegaard and Ben White would be expected to be in the first team starters. So it's of the 6, only 2 will improve the team. That's what Geoff Shreeves is saying to Edu. And Edu responds, we suffered last year because we lost a lot of players and we didn't really have good backups to play games. I believe we need a squad to win games. We need a squad to be in a good position at the end of the season because it's not only about the first 11. Again, we need a foundation. We need players to play, and then we need players to cover the first team. Now, let's put into context. For example, in midfield, you have Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey. So for me, and for Mikel, it doesn't make sense to sign another player on top of them if they are the ones that are going to be playing. That's why we chose Albert Sambi Lokonga to help them. So if you go up front, we have Lacazette, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, Bukayo Saka, Nicola Pepe, Gabriel Martinelli. I want to see them playing together. In this number 10 position, we saw a gap because we just have Emile Smith-Rowe. We needed a number 10 with the same quality to be there and help play. Where we needed to spend big money, and for me and Mikel, that was at center back, the position, because we needed someone to help fill the position. Excuse me. David Luiz leaving, and this was one where we needed someone who can come in straight away and help impact on the team and help may have an impact on the team with the right profile and for what we believe in the short term and long term. So that was Ben White. That's why we went there and signed Ben White. White to give the squad what the squad needed. All right, I'm done being Edu. But what he's trying to say here, he's explaining basically the process that they went through. They looked at the gaps in the squad and opportunities to strengthen not just the first 11, but also to have players and this is so true though. Like last year, we would have Cedric playing at left back, and that was a big drop off from whatever Kieran Tierney was doing. And whenever Emile Smith-Rowe wasn't playing, we saw what happened. Basically, if you forgot, remember the first 3 months after the Manchester United win, October 4th until December 26th. That's what Arsenal looked like without Emile Smith-Rowe. And Emile Smith-Rowe himself is a young player who his body sometimes lets him down, and he needs a little bit of time, to grow and develop into that body. So, in short, it makes sense that Odegaard was signed, but some people will still not have it to this day because they think Odegaard is going to be eating up Emile Smith-Rowe's minutes. So, I just think, you can find the link for this on skysports.com, and you can find, some of the stats. It's a very interesting interview. Geoff Shreeves tries his best, I guess, to ask questions, even though I don't like some of them. Maybe he was asking on behalf of fans so that, he can ask things that people will be interested in reading about. Because, yeah, like for a journalist who is as experienced as he is and with a name like his, I would have hoped that he had done a better job of just understanding some of the other questions and ask better questions than this, help us get even more insights about what Ed was doing, like maybe question the strategy a little bit rather than ask questions that are like, you signed 2 players to improve the first team. Okay, so what? So what? It's not the first team that killed Arsenal last year. It was because the number 10 and the creativity in the team was terrible. And then also when we had absentees, we just didn't have the same level of player. So for example, the first 3 games of the season have been a good indicator of this. We haven't had our best players and we've looked like a championship team, not even a top championship team. We've looked like a mid-table to bottom half championship team against Manchester City and against Chelsea. We looked scared. We looked like we didn't belong on the field with them. So that's my thinking around that. And I think Arsenal have done a good job in trying to come out and explain themselves. I know there's been a lot of criticism around that. And look, what they've done has helped the squad. The squad now, whether Mikel Arteta stays or not, this squad is what some people are calling future proof, right? It's a squad that will be there, and the players are usable across different coaches. Because I'm looking at right now, like Arsenal have the youngest average age of the first 11, um, up by almost 2 years, about a year and a half to 2 years almost. Um, in 2021-22, our average age for starting 11s are like just around under 25, or just around 25, sorry, just under 25 and a half, sorry. Um, so it's about a year or so that we have over the next team. Brentford is close for this year, I guess, but then Southampton and the rest of the teams, like they're quite older than Arsenal. So I mean, I can see what they're trying to do, man. Like, it sucks to watch Arsenal. I'm not gonna sit up here and celebrate the own goal of like signing William, right? That was an own goal, and the fact that he saved us by agreeing to take a hike before his time was up and not sit and wait to get all of his 20+ million pounds that he was owed, which he had every right to. Good on him for not being that guy, right? So good on William, but like I do think that the club deserve a little bit of credit for just recognizing that, hey, we can't spend what other teams are spending. Chelsea spent just on young players last year, I think about four of them, about 220+ million pounds. Like, they paid for a teenage Kai Havertz 70 something million pounds, and they paid quite a chunk of change for, I forget what it was, but like for Timo Werner, who doesn't score goals. But Chelsea can afford to do that kind of thing. And Werner is not a bad player, by the way. I'm just saying, like, clubs have been spending money outspending Arsenal for a while. So let's not pretend that Arsenal spends like 20 million pounds more than some of the other teams now, and pretend like, they are the big spenders that we're talking about. Like, that's where the bullshit is for me. It's like, let's stop pretending that Arsenal are these big, big, big spenders. They've been poor spenders, and they've spent more money than teams like Wolves and teams like maybe Leeds, teams who are doing well, teams like West Ham, teams like actually Everton have spent a lot of money. But teams like West Ham and Wolves, who are kind of like in our neighborhood now, um, they've been better rather than us at spending, right? Leicester, they've spent better than Arsenal, but Arsenal are not, funded by, a whole country like Manchester City, and can't afford to play in those leagues, in terms of like where they buy. We have to make players work, and then when we can't make them work, usually we lose money on those players in a major way, and nobody wants to buy them, because they're overpaid, and nobody wants to buy them because they don't look like they're going to help anybody else improve if they can't help an Arsenal team finishing eighth. So, like, let's call apples apples and oranges oranges. It's not a comparison. Chelsea and Arsenal, another comparison right now in terms of like spending money. Man United, um, Tottenham, maybe, um, Man City. Like those teams are just on a different platform and different planet. Liverpool have been clever, and they've sold well and been able to fund their project that way. Arsenal, as you have seen, like most of the players that have gone, I'm just going to go through the outgoings now just to paint a picture here. The regime before these two guys started together, like last year, because this is like their first calendar year together, Arteta and Edu, as kind of like the dual leads at Arsenal in terms of transfer and whatever, and kind of like putting down the blueprint of the way forward. And Richard Garlick has just started there, like just basically May, June of this year, right? I don't even know like what the exact date was, but he was still working at the Premier League. And so if you're looking at like William Saliba, he was bought for 27 million pounds at age 27. Hasn't kicked the ball for Arsenal. He's at Marseille. I think the club don't want to sell him. I think they really want him to develop, and hopefully maybe even get more money for him next year, or bring him in and have him play. Matteo Guendouzi, attitude problems. He really tanked his value. He's in Marseille as well, and he's doing well. Hopefully, you know, something can be solved there. It looks like the loan becomes obligation to buy for like £9 million. That's a loss on the player of his talent. But that's not on the club that Guendouzi is going to cost, you know, less than £10 million. Basically, Arsenal are going to make, if that's what ends up being the money they get paid, they're going to make a £2 million profit on him because they bought him for about £7 million when they bought him. And then the player, just because of his antics and the way he is, I'm not saying Arteta and the club, could not have done some things better, but I think this kid, he's he was too big for his own boots, and this is not the first coach he's had altercations with, and so you cut your losses when you have a young player who does that, and you keep it moving. So that's what the club have done, and I support them. I support them in that, and so the club have had to cut losses with Matteo Guendouzi, and I'm not gonna complain about them then letting him go because he's just he's a player who's tanked his own value. He's a good kid in terms of like football ability, but when you're building a project this big, you need players who are going to be bought in, who are going to be foot soldiers for the vision. And you're not necessarily needing yes man, but you need people who are going to buy in and really have your back, right? But Guendouzi, he's young, and so I'm not going to fault him for any of the things that happened, but it makes sense that Arsenal have lost money on him, and if they're getting any money, it'll be next summer. And then Dinos Mavropanos, I think he's one of the more unfortunate guys because injuries didn't help him. And now he's at Stuttgart. I think that's his level at the moment. And he has a technical director there who brought him to Arsenal. And so he has somebody who believes in him at the club, who is in a position of authority. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll probably have a career similar to his countryman, Socrates, because he's a tough warrior type of defender. And I would have loved to see him play at Arsenal, but if it's between him and Saliba, then I would say, yeah, keep Saliba. But I don't even know if either of them will be coming back. So, and I think his loan, actually, Dinos Mavropanos, is one that is a loan for £1.5 million, which turns into an obligation to buy for a further 3.5 million. So Arsenal will make a profit there, but it's not something to write home about. He is basically going to make them about 3 million more than what they paid for him, I think. So there we go. The outgoings have been hard. They really have been hard. I'm not here to be like a PR agent for the football club, but just like I think all fans need to be a little bit more reasonable when we talk about these things because no one is really selling easily at the moment because outside of England, a lot of these clubs are looking for loans and loans and loans. I mean, look at the Xhaka incidents, like where he was going for most of the summer and then Roma didn't want to pay. They just didn't want to pay. And the guy had a good Euros. Xhaka I would have been happy to see him go, but like if they wanted to pay £12 million for him, Switzerland captain, 28 years old, in a tournament year, like they had the money because we saw what they paid for Tammy Abraham. They were just taking the piss, right? So I think Arsenal did the right thing, not saying no, just step off if you're not going to pay the money. And then Luca Torreira, I think everybody who follows the club knows what's going on there. The guy had just adjustment problems adjusting to England. Never really understood how to adapt to life in England. Given a loan to Spain, to a South American coaching team under Diego Simeone, to Spanish country. He had some of his countrymen in Madrid, one playing for Real Madrid, Federico Valverde, and then in Atleti, in that locker room, he had Luis Suarez, who is his senior pro at the national team level. So, and he had a hard time making an impression there. So Lucas Torreira is just one of those things where it's like, even when you buy young players who are supposed to have a resale value, sometimes because of the nomadic nature of a footballer's life, life happens, and we had the pandemic made it very hard for some of these kids who are very attached to their families. And, he lost a parent during this time. And so, I mean, there's no way the club would have known those kinds of things. Um, and so Torreira is going on loan to Fiorentina, and then he's going to end up, hopefully having, a somewhat decent season, and maybe Arsenal can recoup, 10, 15 million euros from the 26 they spent on him. I think they spent 26 million pounds on him. They're not getting that back. Believe that. They're not getting 26 million pounds for this kid. And then Joe Willock, who is the sole sale, right? Like the only like meaningful sale that Arsenal made was Joe Willock. And I actually think the player would have been more useful at the club, but they had to sell somebody. Just like last year, they had to sell Emmy because no one was coming in for some of the other players. So Emmy Martinez was sold, and that gave Arsenal 20 million pounds to do some business. I think it helped find some of that Thomas Partey, and I think Joe Willock as well. As soon as they sold him, they were able to then close on Martin Odegaard and close on Aaron Ramsdale. But yeah, the money from sales was just didn't happen. Like, it's lots of loans. Tyrese Jones-Jules went to loan at Blackpool. He's in the Championship. Maybe that, he's a young English striker. Maybe they can raise funds from him or keep him next year. Who knows? And then Daniel Ballard is out in Millwall. Like, these are the kinds of outgoings Arsenal were able to do. Players like some of you guys who don't follow closely don't have never heard of. Daniel Ballard, he had a good loan season at Blackpool last year in League One. Got promoted to the Championship. Played himself into the Northern Ireland national team. Actually scored his first goal. Congratulations to the youngster. Scored his first goal in the World Cup qualifier against Lithuania this midweek. So long story long, like, this is the kind of business that Arsenal has been kind of doing, like putting out the youngsters on loan. Miguel Aziz is another youngster out on loan at Portsmouth. Hopefully, he'll play in the first team because he is a baller. Boy's got talent. Good vision, comfortable on the ball. I mean, he could play in La Liga and some of the top tier La Liga teams and tear it up. He's big too. He's a very strong young kid. You can tell he's been putting in time in the summer in the gym, and so, like, it's so crazy. Like, Arsenal, like, at the moment, they've spent a lot of money, which I sympathize with because they've needed to, but at the same time, the sales have just been really rough. I look at, Willian, just by letting Willian move away to Corinthians, Arsenal made money because they didn't have to pay him off. Willian was still owed on his contract about 20.4 million pounds. So for him terminating that contract, maybe he did get a little, like, wink, wink, a little under the table saying, hey, thanks, man. Good looking out. I don't know. But, like, for him to walk away from a contract, which is what is being reported, that's it. Like, that they made money there, and then probably saved and made money by also letting Hector Bellerin go to Real Betis. Like, we couldn't even get money for him, and he's not a terrible player. So like, the main thing here is just all to say there was a lot of work to be done. In like Edu was saying in his interview, the club sold or let go of 21 players. A year from today to today, they let go of 21 players and only brought in 10. And it seems to me like an intentional approach, and I think it's an approach that I hope people who support the club can get behind. And by that, I don't mean, let's celebrate an own goal when the club, like, and I'm repeating this example because, like, I know that signing Willian was an own goal. It turned out to be an own goal, but I'm not saying let's celebrate when they, when they fuck up and do things that are questionable. I think questioning and giving feedback is part of any person or any clubs or any organization's growth. I think people do need to question, you know what I mean? But I think those two things are not mutually exclusive. Like, when I say support, I don't mean support blindly, but at the same time, if you're going to support your club, when you do criticize, like just criticize as a supporter because you want them to grow and learn to get better. So anyway, I don't want to tell people how to fan, but I do think like sometimes we're a little over the top with some of the ways we react to things. Fire the coach. You lost to the best team in the world. The best team in the country with none of your players who would have even lost there as well. And then fire the coach after 2 games because you lost to the champions of Europe, who just went and bought one of the best center forwards in world football, and you playing with like reserve center backs who cost half of what that striker cost, right? Like the entire back four against Chelsea cost less than half of what Lukaku cost. Holding was bought for £2 million. Murray was bought for like 7. And then Tierney was probably the most expensive backline player we had in that. And he was bought for £25 million from Scotland. And then at right back, who did we play against Chelsea? I think Callum Chambers or something like that. So long story long, like, no, I think it was Cedric actually.
It was Cedric.
Yeah, I think it was Cedric. And Cedric cost what, £5 million? If you want to count the loan fee we paid before he came on a free. So long stories, man. I just think like there's a lot that Arsenal has fucked up over time, but I don't think the guys who are sitting there right now can answer for it all. I think we need to hold them accountable for the things that they have to be held accountable for. And I'm all for that. I'm all for like, having healthy debate around these things as fans of football clubs and fans of like basketball teams or whatever teams we like. But I just think the weird thing about being a fan is like we can be allowed to behave like children sometimes. And then whereas clubs like Barcelona who are run by fans, or at least fans have a strong voice, and they're fucked. So there's no perfect solution to the ownership structure, or like there's no one club that has a divine right to be always at the top. Like I remember watching English football living in Cape Town back in the day when Newcastle were a team challenging for the league, and they haven't challenged since the mid-90s. I remember watching Leeds because they had a South African captain playing for them and I'm South African, so I love them, played for that. I still love them to this day because of Luca Torreira. But like what the problem was with Leeds, like they had all these young players, which is like what Arsenal are doing now, made it to the Champions League semi-final, like in the early 2000s. And then they were gone into the wilderness soon after that, bankruptcy. So no club has a divine right. Aston Villa have won the European Cup. So there's a lot of things that as football fans, I think we don't understand. Like, and it's cool that we challenge and ask questions, but a little bit of humility and realism is not the worst thing we can do for ourselves and our health. Anyway, I've been joined here. I'm recording live, so I've been joined by Alex. Alex, do you want to say a few things, man? What are your thoughts? Do you want to respond to anything I've said, or do you want to add anything?
So I'll respond, I guess, to some of the stuff that you've been saying. And while I agree with you that ups and downs are just part of football and life in general, you're going to have errors where you're good and you're going to have errors where you're bad. But I think, as a fan for your team, to support your team, I think you have to recognize when things have been going wrong and you have to hold leadership accountable to say, you're not the right man for the job, or you're not the right man at this time to lead us to success or to get us out of this state. And so I would say with Edu and Arteta, I don't think they are the right people for the job because, as you said, they've spent a lot of money this transfer window, but I don't really get a sense that their team is as complete as they should be for the money they spent. We bring up teams like Leicester City, who are not a team that goes out and they spend, $100 million every year, but they do get players who have the quality to help them compete. Richarlison on Everton is, probably on his way to becoming one of the next superstars for Brazil, and Everton bought him for £8 million.
No, they didn't.
Everton?
Yeah, Everton bought him for like 50 from Watford.
Richarlison?
Yeah. Richarlison was bought from Watford by Everton for £50 million, brother. Like he was a big spend. Everton
That,
spent
that,
money, man. They spent money on Sigurdsson, 50. But I want you to
I
carry on.
know.
I don't want to interrupt you. Keep going. But
Yeah.
yeah, he was a high pay for by Everton.
Well, what I'm saying is overall, my point is that you can get quality players without having to spend a huge amount of money.
I agree.
Martinez, for example, to me, he's one of the best keepers in the world. I don't think it's a coincidence that Argentina won the Copa America as soon as he stepped on the field for them in goal. I
I
think
agree.
that was very, he was a huge part of that. And so to me, like letting him go, keeping Leno, that's a mistake. We talk about, the first game of the season with Brentford. Leno basically just got bullied around in the goal. And I don't think that would have happened if Martinez was in the goal. Obviously, mistakes happen. But I just think in general, they've made some bad decisions. And I think Arteta's inexperienced to take Arsenal in the condition that they are right now and lead them out of the darkness, out of the wilderness.
While I think agree, you have a point on Arteta. Let me start backwards from some of the things you said. You said Arteta is inexperienced. I think you have a point there. But I think part of the problem with replacing Arteta is going to be finding a coach with experience who's going to have the patience to deal with what we're dealing with right now. Arsenal are ripping it apart, man. They're ripping the whole thing off. It's like an ugly construction site right now. It's not yet whatever it's going to be. So I think it's going to be a hard sell on many managers. If you have any suggestions, I would love to hear them. Like I think none of the managers most fans I hear talk about will want to touch that job with a 10-foot pole. That's my
Yeah,
take.
I agree with you because, I hear obviously you hear the talks about like Conte and stuff like that. And I always
Right.
tell people that's unrealistic. He's probably thinking about the Real Madrid job or Barcelona job or, a team that could compete right now for, championships and Champions League, etc. So the
Yeah.
next manager they get, it's gonna I felt like they could have made a play on Nuno, who's at Tottenham before. I felt like they could. Here's what I feel like: the next manager they have to get has to be a manager who has quality, but just hasn't been given the opportunity to say, "Here's your big team." Because
Yeah.
Arsenal is still a big club, so they still have some draw to where they could get a quality manager, but they have to
Yeah. I
find.
think I think timing is critical though with recruiting a manager. I think right now, I think Arsenal need to buy their time. I think Arteta can do a consolidating job, which is what I think is needed right now. I think Edu coming and talking today, which is what I started the pod on. I read some of his comments and from the interview today. So what I'm understanding, and I'm happy he did that because I think a lot of us were talking just like speculating and trusting journalists and other people. It's good that they talk because now we can then say that's what we're going to hold you accountable to. Without them saying that, I feel like it's been a lot of us just shooting from the dark. And me too. All of us fans, like we want to hold people accountable, but like, what do you hold them accountable to? We holding them to a past standard? Are we holding them to something else? Like when they declared this as a project today, to me, it's like, okay, thank you. It's a fucking project. Sorry, I'm not swearing at you, but like, like it's a project. So let's then build the project. So for me, I feel like we're breaking down, we're about to put the foundation. He talked a lot about foundation today, Edu. If you haven't seen the interview, go check it out. He talked a lot about like bringing up the floor of the team, like the base level, like where if Tierney is injured, we can't have Xhaka play there, and we can't have Cedric play there and have to twist back to his right foot all the time and then make a back pass rather than go on attack with the field open in front of him. Like he did against Benfica last year in the Europa League. So like I feel Arteta, a lot of people I'm frustrated with him, but I'm not yet ready to say he's not fit for the job because I think it depends what the job is. If we ask him to go win the Champions League or we will go win the Premier League, no, right? He's not fit for that job. But if the job is coach his youngsters up, build the blueprint we want to do, yes, it's going to suck. I think I think he can do that job. I think, and I think Edu, having spent the money that he has spent, he explains that look, we've spent money on players that are ready to play now, but also players that are future proof. So I can get behind that because if you look at all the players they've spent money on, they're all 23 or younger. So yes, they're not going to be pulling up trees in the Premier League. However, I do think many of them are ready to plug and play. I'd rather see Sambi right now at 21 play than watch El Neni play every week. Even though I like El Neni, I think El Neni is too much of a instruction. He needs too much coaching to be told what to do and keeps things simple. He's too safe. Sambi, on the other hand, will do things that El Neni won't do. He will break lines of
Yeah,
play.
he's shown potential. He's shown potential.
Yeah, but he's not just potential because he's played, right. He's captain Anderlecht. I know it's not the same level as the Premier League, but like he just played for Belgium just 2 days ago or whatever it was. So what I'm saying is like what they've done looks to me like there's some intentionality behind it, and I can get behind that. And I think Ben White is a better player than what we have, and I think yes, it was maybe a £5 to £10 million overpay, but that's what you get when you buy English. Like we got almost £40 million for Iwobi because it was English. He was never worth anywhere near that. We got a lot of money, over £30 million for Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain when he went to Liverpool, and I thought that was a bad decision to sell. But I'm happy now we did sell. So like what I'm trying to say is like what they're doing, and if them explaining it for me helps me to know at least okay, this is what you're doing. Now I know what I'm questioning. I know what I'm looking for. I know what I'm looking at. Whereas a lot of the time over the last few years, we've been trying to hold on to our kind of like status thing of like, yeah, we're a Champions League team and all these different things. But actually, the way we've been moving, we haven't been moving like a Champions League team for a while, bro. And so that's my worry. And I know the thing with Martinez, if you ask me at the time, like when I look back now, he looks a much better player than when we sold him. Like when he was a 6-month player for the first team, we got £20 million for him. You would not have gotten 5 for him 6 months before then. So I was like, yeah, make the deal. Like that's what I thought because no one was coming in knocking on our door for Leno. So I look at Emmy and I compare him to Joe Willock. I look at him as like the victim of poor planning from before, and Edu and Arteta were not involved with that. Like, you know what I mean? Like I would have rather sold anybody else in midfield, maybe even Ainsley before I let go of Joe Willock. I like Ainsley, but I would have rather sold Ainsley and El Neni and kept Willock and get £20 million that way. So sometimes when you're planning the squad, you have to make sacrifices like that because you need the money to get better somewhere else. What do you think about that?
And I agree to some extent, but the only problem is when are we going to say, okay, they've sorted the squad out? Or because I still feel like he doesn't even know
Takes
what's
time.
his best 11 or because I mean, Kolasinac, I didn't think Kolasinac was even on the team anymore. And it's like you just played him against, who was it? Man City. And
I agree. So I think the Kolasinac thing, I think people are reading too much into that. I think he was actually protecting some of his players there, if you're asking me. I think there was a bit of a protection job happening there. There was no Ben White, and I think we didn't have basically a defense to play against Man City. He needed to patch something up together because Gabriel and Ben White are going to be starting every game when fit, if you ask me. And they both have, like Ben White only played 90 minutes against Brentford, hasn't been back. And that was only after a few training sessions or a few weeks, right? Like after coming back from holiday a little bit. And you saw how Saka looked after the holiday. So, and he was on the England team with Saka. So Ben White and Gabriel are probably going to play a lot of minutes. And then we got our right back situation sorted out on deadline day. So yes, Arteta does make weird lineup selections. I'm not going to defend him for that. However, cleaning up a first team squad takes several windows. And that's what I think Arsenal fans are losing patience with, is because they feel like Wenger's been gone for a long time. When's the change coming? But remember, Wenger was a monumental figure at the club. And so cleaning up after him is going to be a massive, massive, massive undertaking. I don't know how much of Arsenal you've watched before Wenger and after Wenger, but I've seen this like at other clubs, like Manchester United. I know Wenger was not Ferguson, in terms of like the number of trophies, but he was Ferguson in terms of who Arsenal are.
Well,
He's
yeah,
the
because the
greatest
number of
manager in the club's history, and so to replace him, yes, and also like to try and decentralize the power that was around him. There was a lot of like things at Arsenal that had nothing to do with the field performance, even before Wenger left, and then after he left, even more of that happened. like a lot of like power struggles. That stuff can affect how the team plays. A lot of people left. Like there's a vacuum of leadership. Scouts left after COVID, but before COVID, we lost Ivan Gazidis, who was supposed to oversee what's happening here. He went straight to AC Milan because I think he got a shareholding from these American owners who own AC Milan. So like things like that, that I think as a football fan watching the game, we're not thinking about. Like you sound like you're an American person. Are you an American?
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Okay.
American.
So when I look at America, for example, right? Like I'm new to this country, but like when I look at what's happening in the U.S., the front office matters, and a lot of people seem to think it's just the players, but like a lot of these football organizations, baseball organizations, and basketball organizations, they thrive based on decisions made, through a stable front office that has worked and built a chemistry together, and they know how to close deals. Edu and Ateta only have 1 year of working together, like literally. Before that, Raul Sanyehi was the main guy because, Gazidis abandoned ship. And then Raul was kind of like next to the CEO. It was a lot of screw around stuff that would happen there. And look, I'm not trying to make excuses for these guys because they've taken the job and now they're saying this is our time to deliver. And I want to give them time because Edu didn't even have all of last summer by himself. Raul left in the middle of the transfer window, but no one wants to talk about that. And he was supposed to be our guy, Don Raul. Everybody's celebrating him on AFTV and all these places. And like when he signed Pepe and all these deals that he made that were shady, like we paid 72 million pounds for Nicola Pepe. I love the kid, but no ways. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, and Arteta has to work with him. Like, for example, at Man City, 8 of the players who played there were not Arteta's players. Like, as in like he brought them into the club. A lot of them were there when Wenger was there. Kolasinac, that's a Wenger buy. Chambers, Holding, those are all Wenger players. Xhaka, Wenger. Like, if you look through that team, like I think Arteta was actually trying to protect some of his kids there. That's why Sambi didn't see the field. I think he knew we were going to get abused, and I think, and maybe he would never admit this publicly, but I think he was trying to keep some people safe. So he put Kolasinac in there, and he put some of the guys who won't be playing a lot. You will not be seeing a lot of Colin Chambers, I imagine, and you will not be seeing a lot of Kolasinac. You will not be seeing a lot of what's his face, Cedric, I imagine. You'll see them obviously from time to time because we have a squad when we have to use them, but they won't be playing all the time. That's where I am at anyway with it all. Like I feel the pain and the anger of the supporters, and because I'm a supporter too, and I feel it, and my family knows it. I get pissed off. I swear at the TV and like all that stuff. But like I'm just trying to make sense of it all at the moment. I'm trying to get past the anger phase and be like, what are they really trying to do? And like, can I get behind it? Like, yes, of course I will, because I don't have a choice. When you choose your team and you just support them. I'll get angry. I do. But when I come on air to talk about stuff, I try to be productive because like, I do think there's a lot of work to be done there. And I think based on what they've explained and what I'm seeing, what they're saying is in agreement with what they've done. You know what I mean? Like when we have a drop off at right back now, like this guy that they bought at right back can play right back and center back. So okay, we have another center back. So it looks like we might play a back three again. That makes us flexible for some games. Bukayo Saka, people love him, but he's a kid. And I wish we had kept Emmy, but like at the same time, we needed the money, and Aston Villa were giving us 20 million pounds for a guy who only played, and Emmy wasn't Emmy before as well. You know what I mean? Like he went on so many loans, and this is why like I'm not happy with the Ramsdale abuse before he signed. And I think some of the fans who go to the games have been friendly and nice to him and supported him at the games. But a lot of the abuse the kid got because he got relegated with teams that deserve to be relegated. And we forget that, like, Liverpool bought their left back from a relegated Hull team, and other players who played for that Hull team, like, Harry Maguire. Like, when Arsenal buy players that nobody knows, people want to complain. And when Arsenal buys players that are expensive, that people don't think they should buy or whatever, there's an overpay, people complain. It's very hard to keep football fans happy, collective. You know what I mean? Not all of us will be happy about the same thing all the time.
I agree. For myself, I just look at the overall talent pool that they pick up, and I could say I'm not that satisfied with it, and I don't think it's really going to help them improve. So you mentioned Manchester United when Ferguson left, and good point because obviously he left, and none of the managers they got after that, bar Solskjaer, did a good job. So if you notice that era, they were picking up, Depay, Di Maria went over there, Fellaini went over there, a bunch of players went over there, and no one could succeed. And so
And
until
did you
Solskjaer
remember
got,
how much they paid for those players? They paid a
yeah, they
lot.
paid a lot. They paid a
And they
lot of
brought
money.
in experienced managers too.
Yeah, and experience. So it's not difficult. So I agree a lot of the front office stuff because Ferguson, obviously, with Ferguson comes a team around him that he trusts, that he knows are going to make the decisions
And the problem with
based.
Ferguson, he and Wenger were the team. They were the institution. That's the thing. Like they were the all empowered manager, and they were the last of a kind. The two of them, right? Like and that's why I feel like the disingenuous comments from the English media and fans of our club as well. Like I'm not saying people should never criticize. Please don't get me wrong, and anyone listening here, I think we should criticize, and I think we should always expect the highest level possible. But I think when you have an institution that's been built on one man and that man leaves, like David Moyes said it so well about like when he walked in there and he's like you just it's like walking into a house and the father just left and you now the stepfather. That's what it felt like. And Man United never supported, never really embraced him, right? Because they were used to Fergie and he was never going to be Fergie. Whoever got that job after Fergie was going to be fucked. Um, and so my thing is, like, look at how much Man United, a team that was more successful than Arsenal, a team that also had way more resources than Arsenal, threw so much money at the thing, right? They threw a lot of it at the thing, and look who is finding their way back. He's not even half the manager David Moyes is, in my opinion, but he's bringing Man United back. Sometimes you need a bit of stability. You need to ride through the shit and figure it out. And like the stabilizing job is not sexy. And this is why a lot of fans don't want to hear this. And I'm all about this because like I'm a coach and I like this kind of stuff, but I hate the pain of it. But I think it's necessary. Organizational change is hard. It is so hard, man. It is so hard. I can't, you know what I mean? Like I can't make it feel better for other people. Nor can I do it for myself. But I do think the club they are exactly where they need to be. Not necessarily like 20th, but I think they're making the right decisions sooner than Man United. Man United tried on Moyes, who bought Fellaini and bought like a few other players, and they bought Schweinsteiger. They tried to bring all
Yeah,
the big players. Some of them were over the top in terms of like age. And then they fired him within less than a year. And then they got Mourinho. I'm sorry, before Mourinho, they got Van Gaal, who brought Martial for £59 million, Di Maria for like 60, and he brought a few other
the
players like Daley Blind, like Marcos Rojo or whatever his name is from Argentina. He bought a lot of players. Like Man United have spent £1 billion on that squad, and it still looks disjointed. It's starting now to look together, right? And they bought Lukaku. You remember that? Like they've bought so many players, and Ole, remember he's 4 seasons in, he's never won anything, and yet he's getting all the praise from the English media. You would swear he has been winning the Champions League and other things. Sometimes just writing it out with somebody who understands the values of the club. Like I said to you, I don't think Arteta is necessarily the person who will win the league for Arsenal or win, the Champions League for Arsenal. But I think if the job right now is stabilize, coach these kids up, and then in a year again we go and we buy big, but having had these kids grow together and play some football with men together, and remembering that these kids are not just young kids who haven't played football at the top level. They have. I think I'm not saying this is going to be perfect because not all of them are going to pan out. Okay, somebody always flops in football. But for example, if Tavares flops, Arsenal only paid £7 million for him or whatever. They can get that back, right? It's like the Guendouzi thing where we probably mishandled him, but he also created a lot of his downfall. He created a lot of it. Arsenal paid £7 million for him. Now they have him on loan at Marseille. It's a loss, but they're going to get 9 obligation to buy, right? Like it's a loan with £9 million obligation to buy. So they're going to make £2 million profit, which is nowhere near enough, but it's something. So I think that's the kind of thing about like when you buy these young players, especially with the English players, like that money is kind of protected. Especially if Ben White continues to make the England squad, and then Aaron Ramsdale playing for us is probably going to be conceding a lot less goals than those other two teams he played for. So and like that's I keep saying that like people forget that like Newcastle got relegated, Liverpool bought Wijnaldum from that team, right? So like teams that get relegated can have good players, but I think sometimes as football fans we can be very simplistic about, oh no, he got relegated twice. Oh, okay, okay, like, but what's his name? The captain for Man United was part of that Hall team that
Yeah,
Andy was playing
Maguire.
for. You know what I mean? Yeah, Maguire as well as Robbo, who is one of the best left backs in the world when he's around. He played for Hall. Like it's a very and it's, obviously these are not exceptions. Like if you think about Liverpool, how they recruited, they bought a lot of players for Southampton.
But yeah, they even just beyond that, they brought a lot of guys that no one would consider them top class players. So Salah was not considered a top class forward.
Hmm. When he
Um,
arrived, yep,
yeah, when he arrived, neither was Firmino.
he was a Chelsea
Mane,
flop.
yeah, Mane came from Southampton, I believe.
Hmm. And
Um,
then and there were some players that didn't work out, right? Like they bought Nathaniel Klein from Southampton, didn't work out. They bought Danny
yeah,
Ings, didn't work out. So like this is why I keep saying like we shouldn't be short, like we shouldn't remember things that only confirm our biases as fans. That's what I'm trying to say. Like I love the Liverpool project because it's a good example. Because Jurgen Klopp in his first few seasons, he was conceding a lot of goals. Like the Liverpool were winning 3-2, throwing 3-3 a lot. Like he didn't finish in the Champions League the first year he was there, but he was there in October. And Arsenal fans want to say, "Oh, Arteta's been here 2 seasons." Actually, no, he hasn't. Like he came in December, like late December. Klopp started even earlier that year to finish outside the Champions League. And like these are the kinds of things. Like, and Klopp is 5 times the manager Arteta is, and yet we're expecting this guy
well
to.
then, were you dissatisfied with Emery? Did you think Emery deserved to go before?
To be honest, like I think he should have gone after the first season, but I did. I'll be honest. I didn't want him to go because I was like, we gotta get behind this guy. He got us close. Maybe players, maybe squad or whatever. I don't know, but I wanted to get behind him. Um, but I think Emery got David Moyes. I think he got Moyes. He asked for players that he didn't get. He asked for a big guy. They got him Torreira. He asked for Zaha. They got him Pepe. He was trying to get Maguire. Like he didn't get a lot of support. And I think had he been given support, he might have been better. He might have given us good short term success. But I don't think the club really ever got behind him. So if they don't trust him, then fine. Don't support him. So I was happy when he not celebrating it, but like I was happy when they saved him from his loss. Like Emery was, yeah, he when players start like young kids who play for you, who you are giving opportunity to play professional football, are mocking your accent around you in the training ground, it's gone to shit, right? It's literally gone to shit. So that's where I'm like with Emery, it needed to be cut off because he had lost the dressing room, and it wasn't his fault. It was a cultural thing. He was, a guy who struggled speaking English, and kudos to him for trying. But like he just had a communication challenge there, and it didn't work out. And I was happy for him when he won the Europa League because you know he's a nice guy. He's hard to root against, except when he plays Arsenal.
And so then another question is, so then would you say Arteta has the job because he's probably just the cheap manager that they can get and they know they could kind of bully him and get him to deal with what the club is going to right now because there's no real expectations similar to Chelsea and Frank Lampard.
I think yes, and but he's also hungry enough to want to prove himself. So like the thing with giving young people a job, right, especially when they are ambitious and they know a little bit about what you're trying to get them to do, it's a safe gamble. Like if you fire Arteta, you're not losing a lot of money. Like they still haven't extended his contract. This is the thing. People know no one is talking about this. Arteta signed a 3.5 year contract, right? Um, and he has 2 years left now, just under, right? Because this is like year number, I guess, the 2 years left. He's done at 1.5, right? And so for me, I think Arteta is one of those dudes where even as a player, he was a leader. He was, disciplined, super organized. He comes with good recommendations. Pochettino was trying to get him on his staff when he left Arsenal, chose to go to City. Good move, because he probably would have made it hard for him to then come to Arsenal or whatever. I don't know. But I think Arteta is not the idiot many people think he is. But I think his problem is he tries to be a little too cute and clever. He wants to outsmart everybody in the room, and I'm not sure if his ego allows him to listen to people around him. I hope I'm wrong in this, and that's where I think Arteta for me has an issue. I think he's like Thierry Henry had the challenge when he coached at Monaco, and when he his first jobs, a lot of players didn't like the way he talked to them. He talked to them like he was still a player. Um, and he was a little too hard, and he was a little bit like sometimes players need to be mentored and fathered. Not that you need to be their dad, right? But like when you're their coach, you need to talk to them differently, like than if their captain or their teammate was talking to them. That's kind of like a little skill that comes with age and experience. And I think some of what went wrong with, for example, with Guendouzi. So I'm not worried about Arteta not knowing what he's doing. I think sometimes he's too convicted in what he's trying to do, that sometimes he has blinkers and that he doesn't see opportunities. And I'm not basing this on things that I've heard from people, right? Like I'm just wondering, like, why were so many players getting kicked out of Arsenal, right? So he's a no nonsense guy, and he will say what needs to be said. He used to ask Arsene Wenger questions all the time about lineups and things. So these stories I've heard from journalists that I read. I subscribe to The Athletic, and I look at different things, and I try to inform myself. He knows what he's talking about. But my worry about him is, can he sell it to other people and make them believe in it? The early signs is, if they're old and they're questioning him, they're out the door. You know what I mean? Knife through the throat. You out. You done. You dead to me. That seems to be his approach, and that won't work over time, right? Like, because players need a little bit of, like, I know they're rich and they're overpaid or whatever, but like they need a little bit of loving. So that's my worry with him, if you ask me. And I think, yes, he's a cheap option, but I think he's a cheap option that will give you more than the cheap price you pay for him.
I agree with you on that because I think a lot of where that perception may come in is if you look at his mentor in Guardiola, he was around Guardiola a lot. And to me, Guardiola kind of has that same mentality as far as if you don't buy into or believe in his system, then he doesn't really want to or to deal with you. I think that's why obviously Ibrahimovic fell out of favor with him at Barcelona. Eto'o had a lot of issues with him as well. And I think the only problem is with Arteta is, one, he hasn't earned the amount of respect that Guardiola has, obviously just from the success. And then two, the types of teams that he's taken. Guardiola was coaching Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and now Man City.
Yep.
So he could afford that liberty of, you know what, I don't need to deal with you, F off and I'll get someone else. But at
Mm-hmm.
Arsenal, you kind of have to deal with the players that you're getting. So I think that mentality is not going to be as successful with a team of Arsenal's status.
But
And
I
I
think
think he's
I
going to
think I
have
think
to
Arteta. Sorry. Finish your thought.
No, no, you go ahead. I was just saying, I think he's going to have to adapt and say, this is the state, because each teams are different. So,
Mm-hmm.
how to be successful at Barcelona is going to be different from how to be successful at Tottenham or PSG, etc.
So
And so
true.
I think with Arsenal, he knows how to be good with Man City, meaning he's followed Guardiola. He's seen, okay, if we get them to play like this, one around like this, then we could be successful. But Arsenal is a different type of team. And I think right now, they just have to get Arsenal to be one of those tough teams that at least are solid in the defense and say from there we could go. But I think right now he's in his own ideas of how to play football this perfect way. And I don't think it's realistic for the type of team that Arsenal is at this moment in time.
Okay. I agree. It hasn't been ideal up until now. I do think, though, if you look at the way they've recruited, they've really bought into this guy. So if you think about like the team Pep took at Barcelona, right? There was a young Iniesta there. Xavi was a mainstay in the team, but like he wasn't yet Xavi, right? Messi was just barely breaking through. There was Ronaldinho and some other senior players. But a lot of those guys, and then PK comes back from Man United. A lot of those guys were La Masia guys. Arsenal, what are they doing with Haaland right now? They bring a lot of those Haaland boys in. So if you're seeing what's going on at Arsenal, in a way, in a weird way, now I'm not saying Arsenal are going to turn into Barca. Okay, I'm not saying that, but I think Arteta is building kind of like, like priming the land before the farming happens. I think if Arteta doesn't get his vision going this year, he will never get it going. Here's why I think he's going to get it going. I'm rooting for him because I want the club to do well. He's got young players who are coachable, right? And he's been part of recruiting them, and he's called them beforehand, told them what the deal is. So they can't really then turn around and act surprised when he's asking them to do things. So he's gonna get like he's got the players, and there's no midweek football for most of the year. He gets to then go to the field, the training field, and coach the shit out of them in the ways he wants them to play. And if the talent ID has been good, then we will see Arteta's football this year. And hopefully also some of your earlier concerns about like what's his starting 11. He doesn't seem to know his starting 11. Hopefully, if these boys from Arsenal can stop catching the Rona, because they've been catching the Rona like no other team so far. If they can stop catching that and come back healthy, then we will start to see some of that football we saw between December 26th and the end of the season last year, right? There was some really good stuff there. The club, I know the season is a full season, but a lot of us tend to remember the 3 months where we didn't win a game more than the 6 months where we were winning quite a lot and played at top four pace. We were at the third best record from December 26th to the end of the season. And that's like over more than half the season because the season started late last year. So by the time we got to the 26th of December, we're like playing game number 14 on a game number 15 in a 38 game season. So what I'm saying here is, I mean, I guess I'm trying to also just get close to closing this live because I've never done this before, but I'm trying it out, and it looks like I'm going to be doing more of these. But I do record a podcast twice a week. But what I'm trying to say is like I think Arteta has the right space to do what he needs to do if he's ever going to succeed. This is the time. If we get to December and things are looking pear-shaped, then he might be at the risk of losing his job. But I do hope the club like ride this out with him, and I hope the match-going fans ride this out with him. Until then, just give him the time. You know what I mean? You're not going to play Chelsea and City every week, and that's the thing we forget, right? We're not going to play Chelsea and City every week, but everybody else needs to play them too. And those two teams look ominous. They're going to do what they did to Arsenal to a lot of teams. And Brentford at home are going to do what they did to Arsenal to a lot of teams. And Arsenal just played Brentford again in a behind closed doors game and beat them 4-0. But that's neither here nor there. What I'm trying to say is like with a little bit of in between the games and time to plan and prepare, I think this team will actually wreak a bit of havoc, man. I think so. I really, really think so.
Here's hoping to Arteta, like I said, hoping he knows what he's doing and he could get it sorted with the guys because they do have some good, talented players. The last concern I have is I do feel maybe some of the older players have stopped playing for him. I don't know if it's just because, like you said, they've been sick, because obviously Aubameyang has been red for the last couple of months now. Maybe it's because he's been sick, or I know he obviously got malaria. But I just wonder if some players stopped believing it, especially some of the senior players that they relied on so heavily, like Aubameyang.
Yeah. I think we will never know the extent of the effects of the COVID year on some of these guys. Like Alba is a very extroverted family guy. I know his mother was sick for a while. I know, you know what I mean? Like little things like that. Remember how I talk about the power of the front office and how clubs are built on front offices? I really do think some of these guys really do thrive as well on just like family, proximity, and access to people and access to crowds at the stadiums. Alba is a showman, he thrives in that kind of stuff. And some people don't. Like that's why like we're gonna see who's who now in terms of like some of these players who had careers that started in the away from the fans. Like Bukayo Saka played most of his career away from the fans, right? Most of it. He played some in front of fans, but like most of his career, the last 18 months where he blossomed and has been the great player that he has become, and for a youngster, So like I do think some people thrived in that environment and others were affected it in another way. And I really suspect that Aubameyang was one of those people. Just like Willian, like how do you explain what happened with him last year? I'm not going to talk about him long, but like that just doesn't make sense. You don't go from being the player he was the year before to being that bad over 20, because he played 25 or 30 games or whatever for Arsenal. He played like 25, I think. And yet he was horrible. He was really, really bad. So like it's a lot, and now he's back home in Brazil, right? Lucas Torreira, like it's a lot of these kinds of people, like I think who were affected by that year. And I think Aubameyang will already, like this year, will have a much better season than he had last year. That's just my feeling. I don't know if he and Arteta have the best of friendships, but as long as they work well together, hopefully they will, for the sake of the club. Because Arteta, went to bat for him to get that contract,
Yeah, to
and
get the contract.
and
Yeah.
and he's counting on him to lead. So if the senior players are not behind the manager, then this whole thing is going to fall apart. It won't come off the ground. The senior players need to be the right ones, and I think the ones that are there are the right ones. El Neni is a workhorse. He's the teacher's pet. Granit Xhaka is a teacher's pet who can get a rush of blood to the head, but he's a teacher's pet. All the coaches who he's played for love him. He will work and he will train like 100,000% every day. Lacazette, all the youngsters love him. I don't know which senior players are not bought in that are currently there. Maybe Kolasinac, but I don't think so. I don't think Arteta would have played him if he wasn't bought in. Um, yeah, I don't know. Let's just wait and see, man. And I would like, I'd like to carry this conversation on over the course of the season. We're on a bit of an interlull right now, and I'll be doing a few more of these. But yeah, thanks for joining in and for being pleasant. Because I've never really tried this out. I'm going to be doing more and more of these, and maybe it makes it more interactive and it makes it fun. So, you have any like one more thought or something you want to say?
I guess I think the last thing I would like to say on as far as just Arteta and that, obviously, like you said, a lot of that with getting good coaches comes with timing. So I think at this stage you have to give them time because unless you really know you're going to get a top class manager, you don't want to bring in a new guy mid-season already, no preseason to just come in there, especially at the team that Arsenal is. But managers do make a big difference as far as sorting things out on the field. And I would use Tuchel at Chelsea as a good example. He took over for Lampard, and Chelsea's defense was a shambles. They looked like they were struggling on many fronts,
Yeah, we
and he
missed out
got
on that
them.
one.
And his experience, at PSG from making to the finals the year before that, he was able to solidify that Chelsea team and say, make them contenders. So I'm not saying obviously Arsenal doesn't have the talent that Chelsea had to make them contenders, but to be honest with you, no one was saying Chelsea were title contenders before Tuchel got there under Lampard. So I do think that a better manager can get them functioning at a higher level than what they are doing right now.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, okay, there's no arguing against you. Make That's a very good point, and I think we missed out on Thomas Tuchel last year when Arteta was high, was not winning games. Tuchel had just lost his job. But again, Chelsea's experience and being a well-run, well-oiled machine,
And the money that
they
they're going to
jumped. You
spend.
know what I mean? Yeah, and they jumped. They jumped. I think Tuchel would have taken the Arsenal job, and he would have been one of very few. But I wonder how many Arsenal fans would have had him at the time because oh yeah, we're just taking another failure from PSG. Our
Yeah,
fans are not
Liverpool.
always reasonable. So he's like like that. But I like him. I like the guy. And because of what he had done, not at PSG, but what he had done at Dortmund with Aubameyang and like Dembele, that team, like after Klopp left, these teams were exciting. Um, so I hear you, man. Well, thank you, Alex. Cheers, my man. And
What was your
yeah,
name again?
my name is Bones.
Bones. Okay, yeah, it was
Yeah,
nice talking to you.
yeah, nice meeting you, man. Cheers.
All right, cheers.